The locked basement. The Blackwood estate had stood vacant for 40 years before Silas and Elara arrived. It was a skeletal thing of gray stone and jagged gables, perched on a hill that seemed to repel the sun. Silas hauled a heavy trunk toward the porch, his boots crunching on dead leaves. Elara stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the upper windows that looked like hollow eyes. "Uncle Thorne said we shouldn't explore too deep," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of cedar and something sharper, the metallic tang of old coins. They walked down a narrow hallway where the wallpaper peeled like sunburnt skin. At the very end stood a door made of dark, heavy oak. It didn't have a standard knob. Instead, it was secured by 7 iron bolts, each one thicker than the last. "The basement," Silas muttered, reaching out to touch the cold metal. Silas tried to slide the top bolt, but it wouldn't budge. It felt fused to the door by time and rust. He strained until his knuckles turned white, but the basement held its secrets tight. "It's not just locked," Silas said, his breath hitching. "It's sealed, like they were afraid of what might walk out if they left it open." While Silas struggled with the door, Elara wandered into the kitchen. The cabinets were empty, save for a single blue jar on the highest shelf. She stood on her tiptoes, reaching until her fingers brushed the ceramic. When she pulled it down, something rattled inside. She tipped the jar over, and a heavy, jagged key fell into her palm. It was cold, unnaturally cold, and stained with something dark. Elara returned to the hallway, holding the key out like a peace offering. Silas took it, and as soon as the metal touched the lock hidden beneath the final bolt, the house seemed to groan. The wood of the floorboards vibrated beneath their feet. "Should we?" Elara asked, her hand trembling as she gripped Silas's sleeve. Silas didn't answer. He simply turned the key. The 7th bolt slid back with a sound like a scream. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a staircase that descended into absolute pitch. Silas stepped over the threshold, his flashlight cutting a weak yellow path into the void. The air that rose from below was freezing, smelling of damp earth and ancient forgotten things. Elara followed him, her footsteps light and hesitant. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. From the depths of the basement came a soft, rhythmic thumping. It sounded like a heartbeat, slow and heavy, echoing off the stone walls. She reached out to touch the wall for support, but the stone felt damp and strangely soft, almost like skin. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement opened into a wide, circular room. In the center stood a single, tall mirror framed in silver. Silas and Elara stood before it, their flashlights reflecting off the glass. But the reflections they saw weren't their own. The figures in the mirror were wearing their clothes, but their faces were featureless, smooth, blank masks of pale flesh. Silas stepped closer, drawn by a horrific curiosity. He reached out a hand to touch the glass. Inside the mirror, the featureless version of Silas did the same. As their fingers met at the surface, the glass didn't feel solid. It felt like water. The reflection's hand suddenly shot out from the mirror, grabbing Silas's wrist with a grip like an iron vise. Silas let out a muffled cry, pulling back with all his might. "Silas!" Elara screamed, grabbing his waist and pulling him away from the silver frame. With a violent yank, Silas broke free, and they both stumbled backward toward the stairs. They scrambled up the wooden steps as the featureless things began to climb out of the glass. Just as they reached the top, the basement door slammed shut with a deafening bang, and the 7 bolts slid back into place, locking themselves from the inside.